The date is December 8th, 2000, and the setting is Dublin, Ireland.
Right in the city center.
Exactly. It's the height of the Christmas party season, a time when the city is normally just alive with this, very specific, chaotic energy.
Crowds, music, people spilling out of pubs.
But on this night, the atmosphere is something else entirely. It's hostile. We're not just talking about a bit of rain.
No, this was a severe Atlantic storm. It was actively hammering the city.
The conditions were so aggressive that you wouldn't want to be outside for a moment longer than you had to be.
The meteorological records for that night are quite clear. Gusts of wind were reaching speeds of 60 to 70 miles per hour.
60 to 70? That's incredibly strong.
It was an exceptionally heavy storm, even for an Irish winter. Torrential rain, very poor visibility.
And to make a bad situation worse, for anyone trying to get around the city that night, the infrastructure had completely failed.
There was a citywide taxi strike.
That is such a crucial piece of the puzzle here. In a city like Dublin, especially back in 2000, if you didn't have a car or a bus route, no taxis meant you were stranded.
You were effectively cut off from safe transport.
Your only option was walking.
Which is what a significant number of people were forced to do, despite the dangerous weather.
Yeah.
The streets were full of people just trying to get home on foot.
And among those people was a 22-year-old man named Trevor Deely. I want to try and paint a picture of him, because in these cases, the person can sometimes get lost and just become a name. Trevor was physically imposing. He was 6 feet tall. That's 1.83 meters. So he'd stand out. He wasn't someone who would just blend into the background.
He was an ordinary young man, an IT professional who was simply walking home from his work Christmas party.
And his movements, for a time, were tracked with a surprising amount of precision, from a nightclub to his office and then past a very specific point on Haddington Road.
And that's where the known facts end.
It's where the normalcy just stops cold. Because Trevor Deely makes a stop at his office at 3:35 in the morning. He talks to a colleague there, grabs a few things, and leaves at 4:03 a.m.
All of this is confirmed by security cameras.
But those cameras also capture something else. They capture him speaking briefly with an unidentified man, a man dressed completely in black, and then, moments after walking past a bank on Haddington Road, Trevor Deely just vanishes.
He disappears completely. No physical evidence was ever found after that final sighting.
So today our mission is to reconstruct that timeline. We're going to examine the witness accounts, the CCTV data, and really analyze the investigation that followed.
And that investigation has had some very significant updates recently.
It has. There have been false leads, dead ends, and major reevaluations of the video evidence as recently as December 2023 and December 2024. This is a case that has really haunted the city of Dublin for over 2 decades.
It's a case defined almost entirely by a lack of physical evidence and a heavy reliance on interpreting grainy visual data.
Data that has been fundamentally reevaluated in just the last couple of years. So let's start at the beginning. Before we get into the mystery of that night, we need to understand who we're talking about. Who was Trevor Deely?
Trevor was born on August 15, 1978. He was the youngest of 4 siblings, born to his parents, Michael and Anne Deely.
And he grew up in Naas, in County Kildare.
That's right, a town that's well within commuting distance of Dublin.
And looking at his path, his early career, he seemed to be a young man who's, finding his place. He started out studying business at the Waterford Institute of Technology.
Correct. But he dropped out of that program in his second year.
And he pivoted.
Yes, he pivoted his focus and successfully completed a computer course in Dublin instead. And this is what led to his employment in May of 1999.
Right. He gets a job in the IT department of Bank of Ireland Asset Management. Their offices were on Leeson Street, a location that becomes absolutely central to this timeline.
He'd been working there for about a year and a half when he disappeared.
So he had a solid job at a reputable firm. He wasn't just drifting.
No, by all accounts, he was a very reliable employee, and he was well-liked by his colleagues.
There's a detail from just a few weeks before he disappeared that I think is really important for context. It says a lot about his character, his state of mind.
You're talking about the trip to Alaska.
The trip to Alaska. In late November 2000, just a very short time before he vanished, he flew to the United States.
He did. He went to visit a young woman he had met in Dublin during the summer. She had been in Ireland on holiday.
I mean, that's a serious journey. That's not a weekend trip to London. It's the other side of the world.
It was made possible by a friend who was a long-haul flight attendant. This friend managed to get him a heavily discounted fare, essentially what they call a jump seat or a standby ticket.
And what does that tell you about him?
It tells you he was active, that he was socially connected.
Right. He was willing to fly halfway across the way to maintain a connection with someone. This wasn't an isolated person. He had a life that was expanding, not contracting. He was putting effort into his relationships.
It establishes that he was forward-looking. He was maintaining international social ties just before the event. It really works against any idea that he might have been depressed or was looking to disappear voluntarily.
So that brings us to the night itself. Thursday, December 7th, 2000, the Bank of Ireland Asset Management Christmas Party, a standard corporate event.
The social timeline for that evening is very well established. It began with drinks at a venue called Copperface Jack's,
A famous Dublin spot.
From there, the group moved to the Hilton Hotel for more drinks, and the night ended at Buck Whaley's nightclub, which is on Lower Leeson Street.
So these are all very close to each other, right in the city center, a pretty standard pub crawl for a work night out. The night eventually winds down, and Trevor decides it's time to leave Buck Whaley's.
He leaves the nightclub at approximately 3:25 a.m.
Okay, so his destination is his apartment. He lived in a complex called the Renoir on Serpentine Avenue in Ballsbridge. Now, on any other night, you'd just grab a taxi.
But the strike made that impossible.
And the storm, as we've said, was at its peak, so he's on foot. But here's the first deviation from what you might expect. Instead of walking straight home, which would have been a direct route, Trevor makes a detour.
He decides to stop at his workplace, which was nearby.
He arrives at the Bank of Ireland Asset Management office at 3:35 a.m., so about 10 minutes after leaving the club.
Yes.
This stop, this period between 3:35 and 4:03 a.m., it's a detail that people have really fixated on. Why go back to work at 3:30 in the morning after a Christmas party? On the surface, it feels unusual.
It does, but the evidence suggests it was a practical decision, not a sinister one.
How so?
Well, to get in, he had to call security to be let through the gates. And once he was inside, his colleague described his behavior as entirely normal.
He wasn't rushing. He wasn't trying to hide anything.
Not at all. He made a cup of tea. He sat and spoke with a colleague, a man named Carl Pender, who was working the night shift.
And he did things you'd expect a conscientious employee to do.
He logged on to his computer to check his emails. And he even made a to-do list for his shift the following morning.
That to-do list, that's a critical psychological marker for me. You just don't make a list of tasks for the next morning if you don't intend to be there.
It's a clear indication of future planning. He was mentally preparing to be back at that desk in just a few hours.
And there was another very practical reason for the stop.
Yes. He went to get a large umbrella from his desk. Given the storm outside, it's highly probable that this was a primary motivation for stopping at the office in the first place. The walk home without one would have been awful.
Right. And while he's at the office, or maybe just as he's leaving, there's another piece of evidence that points to his state of mind. He makes a phone call.
He called a friend, a man named Glenn, in his hometown of Nass, and he left a voicemail.
The contents of that voicemail are just heartbreakingly mundane. It wasn't a call for help, not a cryptic goodbye.
His friend described the message as saying something to the effect of, "Hi, Glenn, I've missed you there. Just on my way home. All going good. I'll talk to you tomorrow."
All going good. He's safe. He's indoors. He has his umbrella. He's about to head home. He fully expects to speak to his friend the next day.
Tragically, the friend deleted the message, thinking nothing of it at the time. So investigators never retrieved the actual audio.
So Trevor leaves the office. The time is exactly 4:03 a.m. He has the umbrella. He steps out into the storm, heading towards Ballsbridge. And this is where we encounter the most baffling part of the entire case, the CCTV evidence.
And this is where we have to be extremely precise, because there has been a lot of confusion over the years regarding the people seen on these cameras. The narrative has shifted dramatically because of recent analysis.
Okay, let's start with the man in black. And specifically, let's talk about the encounter at the gate of the office.
The CCTV footage from the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building reveals a man, dressed entirely in black, standing outside the main gates.
And he wasn't just passing by. He wasn't, sheltering from the rain.
No. The footage shows this man waiting there for approximately 30 minutes before Trevor even arrived at the office.
30 minutes. Standing in a storm with 60-mile-per-hour winds, that implies a very specific purpose for being at that exact location at that time.
When Trevor arrives at the gate at 3:35 a.m., there's a brief interaction. The footage is grainy, but it clearly shows a short conversation between Trevor and this man in black.
Trevor then goes inside. The man doesn't follow. But here's the key point. When Trevor leaves the office later, At 4:03 a.m., that man is gone.
Correct. The man in black was no longer waiting outside when Trevor departed.
And what about that man? Has he ever been identified?
As of the very latest updates in December 2024, he has never been identified.
A complete ghost. We don't know who he was, why he was waiting in a storm, or what he said to Trevor. And this is the person who had the last known verbal interaction with Trevor other than his colleague Carl.
Precisely. And, just to add another layer, 2 other men did arrive at the gate about 2 minutes after Trevor went inside. But they have since been identified and cleared. They were colleagues. The man who waited for half an hour, however, remains a mystery.
Okay, so that brings us to the next piece of footage, and this is where the story gets very complicated, and where recent police work has completely changed the narrative. We're moving ahead to 4:14 a.m. The location is Haddington Road.
Specifically, it's an AIB bank on the corner of Baggot Street Bridge and Haddington Road.
Its security camera captures Trevor walking past. He's got the umbrella up. He's heading in the direction of his flat. This image at 4:14 a.m. is the last known image of Trevor Deely alive.
At about 30 seconds after Trevor walks out of the frame, a man, also dressed in black, walks past the same spot, appearing to follow him.
For years, the main theory, the one police worked with, the one the public knew, was that this man trailing him on Haddington Road was the same man he spoke to at the gate.
That was the initial Garda theory, yes. They believed the man from the gate had waited, perhaps hidden, and then followed him.
But we have to be absolutely clear. Based on the major update from December 2023, that is not correct.
It is not correct. This is a massive turning point in the public understanding of the case.
It rewrites the entire middle of the investigation. So what happened in December 2023?
Advanced digital enhancement of that CCTV footage allowed Guard A to trace the movements of the man seen at 4:14 a.m. on Haddington Road.
And they found him.
They found him. They interviewed him. And the result was definitive. This man was not the same person who spoke to Trevor at the office gate.
So the man walking behind him on Haddington Road, the so-called follower.
He has been fully cleared.
Yeah.
Investigators are satisfied that there was nothing suspicious about his movements. He was just another person walking home that night.
This changes everything. It means the follower at 4:14 a.m. was a red herring, a complete red herring.
He is out of the equation.
We spent years looking at that grainy figure thinking we were seeing a predator stalking his prey. But we were just looking at 2 separate people walking home in a storm.
It refocuses the entire investigation back to that first encounter. The man waiting at the gate at 3:35 a.m., the one who has never been identified, is the primary person of interest.
Okay, so Trevor walks past that bang at 4:14 a.m. The man behind him is innocent. But somewhere between that camera and his front door, Trevor Deely ceases to exist.
Correct. He vanishes on that final stretch of his journey.
Let's talk about the immediate aftermath. Friday morning comes. Trevor doesn't show up for work.
His absence was noted, of course, but given the late night and the Christmas party, his colleagues just assumed he was sleeping it off.
It wasn't seen as a crisis.
No, it's not uncommon for someone to be late or even call in sick the day after the office party. There were no immediate alarm bells.
And what about at his apartment?
His flatmates were away for that weekend, so there was no one home to realize he hadn't returned. The apartment just sat empty.
So the whole weekend passes. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Silence. And no one knows he's missing yet.
It wasn't until Monday morning, when Trevor failed to show up for work for his second day, that things escalated. His workplace contacted his family. It was quickly established that no one had seen or heard from him. He was then formally reported missing.
The response from the Deely family was, by all accounts, immediate and incredibly intense. Detective Sergeant Michael Fitzgerald, who worked the case, he described them as uniquely proactive. They don't just wait.
They mobilized instantly. They printed hundreds of posters, distributed thousands of leaflets. They went door to door to houses and businesses asking if anyone had seen anything.
And they were the ones who secured the key evidence.
That's an incredible detail, yes. It was friends of the family, not the police, who initially obtained the CCTV footage that has become so central to this investigation. They went to the businesses themselves and asked for the tapes before they could be recorded over.
Unbelievable. The family themselves secured the evidence that has defined this case for 25 years. Meanwhile, the official search gets underway. The Garda Sub-Aqua team is deployed.
Yes, they searched the River Daughter and the Grand Canal. Bodies of water are always a primary focus in cases like this, especially involving someone walking home late at night, possibly after having a few drinks.
But they ran into a problem with the Grand Canal.
They did. They faced a significant logistical limitation. They were unable to drain the Grand Canal basin.
Why not?
Draining it would have compromised the structural integrity of all the surrounding buildings. The basin is an integral part of the local engineering, and removing the water pressure could have had catastrophic results.
So while they searched it with divers, they couldn't empty it for a complete 100% certain search. There was a blind spot.
A necessary one, due to those engineering constraints, but a blind spot nonetheless.
Okay, so during this initial phase, there were also technical leads they were trying to chase down. One of them involved Trevor's mobile phone.
Right. Trevor's sister, Michelle Deely, stated that she rang his phone a few times over that first weekend, and she believes it rang out.
Meaning it connected and rang rather than going straight to his voicemail.
Exactly. And the implication there is that the phone was on, it was active, and therefore it likely wasn't at the bottom of a canal.
Which would be a huge clue.
It would. However, Dr. Philip Perry, who was a researcher at Dublin City University, provided an expert rebuttal to this. He stated that a mobile phone from the year 2000 with that era's technology would short out within seconds of being submerged in water.
So if the phone did ring, it wasn't in the river.
Correct. If it rang, it was almost certainly dry. However, Michelle herself has since admitted that she can't be 100% certain it actually rang. In such a traumatic situation, memory can be fragile, and the brain can sometimes fill in gaps.
So it's another one of those frustrating, ambiguous details. It could mean everything, or it could mean nothing.
Precisely.
Investigators also looked seriously at that Alaska connection we talked about earlier.
Yes, because the trip was so recent, Gardai had to consider an international angle. Was it possible he had decided to go back?
So they sent investigators there.
Two Gardai traveled to Alaska. Trevor's sisters also traveled there separately, on their own initiative. They interviewed the young woman Trevor had gone to visit.
And the result?
It was a dead end. The trip produced no leads, the young woman had no information, and there was absolutely no evidence to suggest he had any plans to return to the U.S. or had made any contact.
So years go by, the posters fade, the case goes cold, but it never really leaves the public consciousness in Ireland. Then, around 2015, 2016, there's a new wave of interest.
A 2015 documentary, Donald McIntyre, Unsolved, featured the case prominently. And then, in December 2016, a new formal investigation was opened.
And with that new investigation came a very substantial reward.
A reward of €100,000 was offered for information in April 2017. That's a significant sum, clearly intended to try and persuade someone who might have been holding on to a secret for nearly 2 decades.
And this renewed push for information seems to have produced a tip, a very specific and very dark tip that led to a major search operation later that year.
Yes, in August 2017, the investigation moved to Chapelizod.
This was a huge development. Acting on this tip-off, Gardai began a massive search of a 3-acre secluded wooded site in Chapelizod, which is about 8 kilometers from where Trevor was last seen.
And the theory behind this search was specific. It wasn't about a random accident. It was about murder.
What was the informant claiming?
The informant claimed that Trevor had been murdered by a known Crumlin-based criminal. This individual was supposedly part of a gang involved in drugs and prostitution.
This is the same gang that had been linked to the murder of Sinead Cully back in 1998. So we're talking about very serious, violent offenders.
Correct. The allegation was that Trevor had a chance encounter with this criminal. It wasn't premeditated. The theory suggested that maybe he saw something he shouldn't have, or there was some kind of altercation that escalated with deadly speed.
So they searched this 3-acre site in Chapelizod, and they did find things there.
They found a gun and they found drugs. But forensic analysis concluded that these items were in no way related to Trevor's case. The site was determined to be a stash area that was being used by local criminals to hide contraband. But it held no evidence whatsoever connected to Trevor Deely.
No remains, no clothing, no personal effects.
Nothing. The search was called off in September 2017. It was another deeply frustrating dead end.
It ruled out a specific geographical lead, but not necessarily the overarching theory of foul play.
Exactly. It left the investigation right back where it started, with the grainy CCTV footage.
Which brings us to the current status of the case, looking at these last couple of years. We really need to underscore the importance of that December 2023 update again.
It cannot be overstated. Mark Deely, Trevor's brother, confirmed it publicly. The man following Trevor on the Hannington Road CCTV was found, interviewed, and completely cleared.
This just deleted the most prominent visual lead that the public, and likely the police, had been focused on for more than 20 years.
It simplifies the visual evidence dramatically. We're no longer looking for a follower. We are looking for the man at the gate,
The man who waited for 30 minutes. His identity remains completely unknown.
And the reason why two of Trevor's colleagues were also standing outside that same gate minutes later, that also remains unexplained.
In December of 2024, Gardaí issued yet another appeal for information. And they were very specific this time.
They were. The appeal was targeted specifically at identifying the man in black at the gate.
And as of mid-2025, the official classification of this case has not changed.
That's right. Gardaí have confirmed it remains a missing person investigation. It has not been upgraded to a murder investigation.
Why is that distinction so important, legally speaking?
It means that, despite the passage of time and the suspicious circumstances, there is no definitive evidence of a homicide. Without a body, or a confession, or forensic evidence proving he was killed, they must treat it as a disappearance.
It has now been over 25 years.
A quarter of a century of not knowing.
And when you look at all the facts, Trevor Deely was a responsible, happy young man. He had a good job. He'd just come back from an adventure in Alaska. He had a to-do list written for the next morning.
Every piece of evidence points to a man who was fully intending to continue his life the very next day. There were no signs of a personal crisis, no signs of him preparing to leave.
He just vanished during a storm in a busy capital city. 1 minute he is on camera, the next he is gone.
The tragedy is just compounded by the near-miss nature of the evidence we do have. We see him. We see the person he spoke to. But the resolution, the clarity, it remains just out of frame. The technology of the time captured just enough to create a mystery, but not enough to solve it.
For his parents, Michael and Anne, and for siblings, the pain is just enduring. They have fought to keep his name in the public eye for all this time. They have never, ever stopped looking for answers.
And the case officially remains open.
The man at the gate is the key. It seems to all boil down to him now. Someone knows who he is. Someone knows why he was waiting there in a storm at 3:30 in the morning. And that person knows what he said to Trevor Deely.
And until that identity is established, the timeline will always be incomplete. That moment is the blank space at the heart of the entire case.
We've walked through the storm, the office stop, the confusing footage, and the fruitless searches. It's a story of a life just suddenly interrupted, and a mystery that has refused to be solved for a generation.
It's a chilling reminder of how fragile that line is between being here and simply being gone.
Thanks for listening.